in the moments since Greg had left her. During that tiny window of time, the flames had more than doubled in height and intensity, and their all-consuming heat sucked so much oxygen from the air she could barely maintain consciousness. As she neared the doorway, a bedroom window imploded with a loud crash. Hot, broken glass slammed into her upper torso like a shotgun blast, pelting her face, neck, and shoulders with crystals of molten shrapnel. The impact knocked Melanie to her side. She shrieked in pain and instinctively started curling her body into a protective ball. The skin that had once covered her delicate face was gone, and the meat that remained broiled in the heat. That would have done it for Melanie had she been fighting solely for her own life, but she was fighting for Greg and the twins, and she refused to let them down. Melanie shrieked again, this time in anger. She got to her hands and knees, made her way through the doorway, crawled to the base of the stairs, and looked up. The stairwell was an inferno, and the bottom half of the staircase was virtually gone. Melanie's heart sank. She screamed for her family, listened for a response. There was none. Then, as if an angel had whispered it, Melanie had an idea. She got to her feet and made her way to the powder room. She turned on the faucets, soaked the guest towels. She staggered back to the area where the steps used to be. Tapping into her last ounce of strength, she screamed, "Greg!" and flung the towels as hard as she could upward into the rising flames in the direction of the kids' room. Had he heard her? Had he answered? She couldn't tell. Emergency personnel arrived just 4 minutes after the 911 call was logged. Neighbors, hearing sirens, gathered in the street and watched in horror. Later, when reconstructing the events at the scene, firefighters determined Greg had made it to the children's room, opened the window, and hung a sheet from it to alert rescuers to the location. He'd had the presence of mind to gather both girls in his arms on the floor beneath him before dying. Firefighters entering the bedroom through the window were impressed to find wet towels covering the girls' faces. This is what saved their lives that night, they decided, though one of the twins died later on in the hospital. "Son of a bitch," Augustus Quinn said. "You are one tough son of a bitch, I'll give you that." Shakespeare was not, but Creed should have been dead by now and wasn't. "Let's call it a night," Quinn said. They were on opposite sides of prison cell bars, 60 feet below the Earth's surface. It took a while, but Donovan Creed staggered to his feet, a vantage point from which he now grinned at the hideous giant manning the torture device. "What was that?" Creed said. 8 seconds? The ugly giant nodded. "Give me 10 this time." "You'll die," Quinn said. Though the two men had worked together for years, Quinn's words had been uttered simply and gave no evidence of warmth or concern. Creed supposed that for Quinn it was all business. Creed had paid his friend to administer the torture, and Quinn was expressing his opinion about continuing. Did he even care if Creed died tonight? Creed thought about that for a minute. The ADS weapon had been created as a countermeasure to the terrorists' practice of using civilians as human shields during the Iraq War. Effective up to a quarter mile, ADS fires an invisible beam that penetrates the skin and instantly boils all body fluids. The idea was simple. You point the weapon at a crowd, flip the switch, and everyone falls to the ground in excruciating pain. You flip the switch off, collect the weapons, and sort out the terrorists. Moments later, everyone is back to normal. Unfortunately, during the testing phase, word got out about soldiers suffering irreversible heart damage and ruptured spleens. When human rights organizations got involved, the public outcry was so severe the weapon had to be scrapped. Donovan Creed had been among the first to test the original ADS weapon without receiving permanent organ or tissue damage. From the first exposure, he believed the weapon held enormous potential as a field torture device, provided it could be modified to a handheld size. To that effect, Creed had persuaded the military to allow one of the original prototypes to go missing long enough for his geek squad to turn it into a sort of ham radio project. The weapon currently aimed at Creed through the prison bars was one of a set of 3 that had been produced to date. The other 2 were locked in a hidden closet 20 feet away. These 3 weapons were second generation, meaning they were much smaller than the original, but not as small as they would ultimately need.